Hello and welcome to another Minimalist Gourmet. Today I'm bringing you Ropa Vieja, which is the national dish of Cuba. It is delicious and easy to make, so let's get started. I start off by roasting a red bell pepper. Although technically optional, I highly recommend that you do this as it brings a tremendous amount of flavor to the dish. Simply turn your range, gas or electric, onto high and place the bell pepper directly on the element or over the flame. You're going to continue to turn it until it looks evenly cooked. Once the pepper looks like Freddy Krueger before his skincare routine, you know it's done. Simply take the pepper off the heat and place into a container with a tight-fitting lid or a plastic bag. Letting the pepper sit for 15 minutes in a tightly closed container will allow it to steam with the residual heat and easily loosen the skins that are charred from the meat that we actually want to consume. After 15 minutes, the pepper is now cool to handle, as well as the char being very easy to remove from the skin. Using a paper towel, your hand, or the back of a knife, gently scrape off the ash and discard. However, do not run this under water. You will wash away all of that wonderful flavor that you just developed. The skin will be very easy to remove. Don't worry if you can't get every last little speck of ash off though, that's okay. After clearing all the ash, cut around the stem to remove it, cut out any membranes, and then use a paper towel, the back of a knife, or your hand to scrape away the seeds from the inside. Cut into strips and reserve for a little bit later. Now you know how to roast red bell peppers, which are a fantastic addition to so many dishes. Trust me, you'll find places to use it. The traditional recipes will call to use flank steak. However, I believe brisket is a much better option for the low, slow cooking method. If you're looking for a much better budget-friendly option, I recommend using chuck. Here I have a full brisket that weighs about 1.4 kilos or roughly 3 pounds. Before cutting into portions, take note of which direction the muscle fibers are running. This is very important as you always want to cut 90 degrees to the direction that the muscle fibers are running. First, I need to cut this into 2 separate pieces so it's easier to manage when I make the actual cuts. Again, I will indicate in which direction the muscle fibers are running so that I can make a cut 90 degrees to them. Also, portioning this into 4 pieces will make the next step of browning it a lot easier. And speaking of the next step, let's move on to searing. In a pot with a tight-fitting lid over medium-high to high heat, add a few tablespoons of cooking oil. Place the pieces of meat into a single layer on the bottom of a pan and allow it to brown. Place each piece of meat into the hot oil so that we can begin to sear it. We're looking to brown all surfaces of the meat so that we can bring a lot of extra flavor to the party. And to be very clear, at this point you are simply searing off the outside of the meat to brown it. You are not actually cooking the brisket, so this shouldn't take very long, a few minutes on each side. If you're using a slightly smaller pot that doesn't have enough room to put all of the meat in a single layer, that's fine. You can do this in batches. Simply brown off each side of a couple pieces of meat, pull them off onto a plate, set them aside for later until you've completely browned all the pieces. We'll be braising this beef for the rest of the cook. If you're not familiar, braising is simply cooking something in a flavorful liquid, very similar to stewing. Use either enough water or beef stock to just cover each piece of brisket. Next up, I'm going to add 1/3 of a cup lime juice. This will bring a very refreshing and light citrus flavor to the dish. 2 tablespoons of mixed herbs. Mine happen to include oregano, rosemary, and parsley. Of course, you're welcome to add any herbs you like, whether they be dried or fresh. 1 to 2 teaspoons of cumin for that authentic flavor, and the same amount of black pepper. If you use beef stock to build your braise, then you can skip this step. However, if you used water like I did, you'll need to add the appropriate amount of beef bouillon cubes or powder to make this into a beef stock. I find beef stock to be salty enough as is, so I do not add any extra salt, but again, season to taste. 1 medium onion chopped, as well as 4 to 6 cloves of garlic. Make sure to give everything a nice mix here before moving on, just so that all of that beef bouillon powder is integrated completely. A cup to a cup and a half of your favorite tomato product, whether that be tomato puree, fresh diced tomatoes, crushed canned tomatoes, they all work fine. A 1/4 cup of vinegar. I happen to be using apple cider vinegar here, but white vinegar works really well too. Give everything a real good thorough mix so that everything is integrated, and then place it over a medium to medium-high heat source until it begins to simmer. Once it's reached a simmer, turn off the heat, place the lid on top, and move on to the next stage of cooking, which will be done in the oven. You're looking for a medium to medium-low heat so that the braise is just gently simmering while it's being cooked. This is going to go in the oven for anywhere between 2 to 3 hours. No oven? No problem. Simply continue to cook this mixture on a very low heat, covered on top of the range for 2 to 3 hours. Using either of these cooking methods, what you're looking for is a piece of meat that can easily be shredded by 2 forks. You're looking for this texture right here. Using two forks, shred each piece of meat into bite-sized little pieces. Because we didn't trim any of the fat off before we cooked this piece of brisket, this is also the point that you're going to want to separate out that fat. It's going to fall right away from the meat and be very easy to pull apart. If needed, add enough water to the remaining braising liquid so that it will just be able to cover all of the shredded meat when placed back into the pot. The shredded meat will now go back into the braising liquid for the final cooking process. To this, go ahead and toss in that amazing roasted red bell pepper we made earlier. The long cooking process mutes some of these flavors. In order to add a nice blast of freshness at the end, I like to include some diced red bell pepper, some diced white onion, a little bit of freshly squeezed lime juice, and some more vinegar. Give everything a nice stir before moving on to the final cooking process. Using low heat, bring this mixture up to a gentle simmer, cover, and cook for an additional 15 to 20 minutes. This last cooking process allows all the flavors to go ahead and mix and meld, as well as softening up that fresh red bell pepper and diced onion that we used. And hey, if you found this video useful, don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe. Really appreciate it. 20 minutes later, we are done. Guys, it is just that easy to make this dish, and it is absolutely delicious. I highly recommend you try it. You can put this on rice and beans, in an arepa, on polenta, or just eat it alone. It is that delicious. Thank you so much for watching.